Thank you, Chris, very much. Thank you. All right. Okay, so as Chris said, I'm a visiting researcher at the University of Winchester. I no longer work there full-time. I teach in Andover College, which is an FE college in Andover in Hampshire, quite near Basingstoke if you're a bit hazy around Hampshire geography. I lecture A-level sociology and German, which is a very strange combination. I do not do them at the same time. I'm also the academic tutor for the whole of Access to Higher Education, which, if you're not familiar, is an alternative means of getting into university. You do the equivalent of 3 A-levels in 1 year. It's aimed at people who are not following a traditional route into education. So maybe they got pregnant when they were doing their A-levels, or they've just had a tough time in general. Or we have a lot of international students who are a lot of military wives who have come to the UK because their partner's in the military and they want to do something with their time. So they do Access, then they get a career in nursing or teaching or social work. So a lot of teaching adults as well. So I am very used to standing in front of lots of people showing off. So yeah, I also do a lot of faith activism work. Because I am about the only bisexual Christian on the planet who's willing to talk about it, I am widely invited to speak at home and internationally, and I do a lot of travelling, which is hard to fit around teaching. I also have 3 teenagers. My life is very, very, very full. But I believe we have one life and we should make the most of it. I'm not one for sitting around. So that's me. Other hat I wear. I'm secretary of the European Forum of LGBT Christian Groups. This is for me, a massively important part of my life. This is a collection of LGBT Christian groups from around Europe, and we campaign and educate. And Alan here is also part of it, and it's lovely having an ally in Alan here today. There are not very many British LGBT organisations signed up to the European Forum. There is a membership fee, but it's based on the size of your group and the country you're part of. And the UK is not deemed to be a rich country, and neither is it a poor country. The membership fee is kind of in the middle. We, as Luke was touching on this morning, we are in a position of relative privilege being British or living in the UK. And there are many people in Europe, especially our LGBT friends in Poland, Armenia, Russia, Ukraine, who have nowhere near the life that we are able to have as LGBT people, and we need to be supporting these people. And I just feel really, really passionately that there needs to be more UK involvement in that organisation. So that is probably my main, if I'm going to wear a Christian organisation hat, that is my hat. And it goes without saying I voted Remain. Okay. Right. That's my Twitter handle if you want to tweet about how wonderful stroke dire this talk is. The subject is we need to talk about bi, the subject the church keeps ignoring. It is a play on the book by Lionel Shriver, We Need to Talk About Kevin. We need to talk about bi. Okay. Excuse me a moment. I'll just bring my notes up. So, no, I don't want a Windows update. That is a really bad time to ask me for that. So, yes. So my name's Carol Shepherd. Carol, great solid lesbian name. However, I'm not a lesbian. I identify as bi. Publications, I have not brought books with me. I'd like to say, because I don't want to fleece you all, but the truth is I forgot. QR codes, if you're interested. This one I wrote under a pseudonym. It's called 119, My Life as a Bisexual Christian. 119 is a number of words the Church of England uses in issues in human sexuality to describe bisexuality. And I'll go into that later. So Jamie Summers is me. Why Jamie Summers, I hear you ask? Anyone know who Jamie Summers is?
Bionic woman.
The Bionic Woman.
I've read the book.
By woman, get it? Yeah. Reason it's in a pseudonym is because I have teenage children, and this is basically about what happened to me in the Church of England. It is currently on Amazon Prime for £4.69. There's a QR code. You've got no excuse because it's really cheap. Some of it is not quite true of my life anymore because I wrote it while I was still married to a guy. We're really good friends. He's lovely, but my life has changed a bit. But most of it is about what happened to me in the Church of England and is entirely relevant. This is my academic book that came out last year. This is about £40 on Amazon. If you message me, I can probably do you a deal. This is an academic book. However, it's written fairly accessibly for pastors and church leaders. Bisexuality in the Western Christian Church, the damage of silence. So I designed the cover myself. I did not want a church with a rainbow flag on it or any of the other things they always put on books. It's all about why the issue around the issue in the church is not about people uttering biphobic things. It's the fact that nobody talks about it. And Chris has set me up nicely by saying last time we had a conference, somebody came up and said, well, you never talk about bi. Oh, it's true. Nobody wants to talk about it. So, I've heard a bit about me. I actually work in Andover. I live in Southampton, famous for the Titanic and a mediocre football team, both of whom have sunk without trace. In terms of church personship, Luke, I'm afraid I have to tell you, you are wrong. There is one church in the UK that's utterly and totally affirming of everyone, bi people as well, and that's Augustine URC in Edinburgh. My partner Sean lives in Edinburgh, I live in Southampton. Sensible, huh? What does work is I live by Southampton Airport, and actually I'm originally Scottish, my extended family are in Edinburgh, so it's not as outlandish as it seems. I started going to Sean's church. It is wonderful. It has a straight married priest who's been there for 10 years, lots and lots of LGBT people, lots of straight people, lots, but children, and I feel totally and utterly welcome as a openly bisexual person. So for me, that is a very, very affirming place, but I will admit it's the only church I've ever been to in my life where I have felt totally accepted. So, and I've been to many churches, so I would agree that it is very hard to find a church that is totally accepting. Right, so I've had these two books published. Forthcoming, couple of chapters, the lower two, chapter of Bisexual Christians, Depression and Suicidality, so cheery little tome there. That's going to be in a book, an academic book by Routledge. Another chapter, which I'm probably more excited about, which is in a Bisexuality in Europe book. They've got bisexual academics from all over Europe to write a chapter, and I'm writing about monosexual church policies and non-heteronormative youth cultures, which is a big waffly way of saying increasingly numbers of young people are identifying as non-heterosexual, but our church policies make out that nearly everyone is straight, with the odd few unfortunate examples who are gay or lesbian. But that is not answering what young people are saying. Young people are not saying, I'm gay and lesbian, they're saying I'm not entirely straight. I'm pan, I'm gender fluid. And we don't seem to have any church policies. And I do know the church is always 20 behind, it's like hairstyles in Swansea, but, you know, we need to move that way. So basically the other book is forthcoming, that is a monograph. I'm writing a book which will be published by Exuberanza Press, which is a branch publishing wing of the European Forum. And that's about how pastoring bisexual Christians in Europe. So I have been interviewing people all over Europe about being bi and Christian. If I haven't cornered you yet for an interview. Meet me in the disabled toilet afterwards, and I will... we have to keep it confidential, you see. You'll get used to me. Okay. Consider this. You can read it on here. This was on the door of Bradford Cathedral in 2018, and it was much posted on Facebook, if you've seen it before, as a fantastic example of inclusivity. Here we practice the inclusive gospel of Jesus Christ. You will be mixing with tax collectors and sinners, hypocrites and heretics, Greeks and Jews, women and men, old and young, black and Asian, Muslims and musicians, Sikhs and Hindus, people of other faith and none, strangers and visitors from all around the world, bishops and bigots, female and male priests, homosexuals, lesbians and transsexuals, people with disabilities and diseases, rich and poor, thieves, adulterers, and other sinners like you. What do we notice? There's no bisexuals.
So you're not a sinner? I can assure you I
Okay. Opposite is a page from the 5-year strategy document of outcome of the Methodist Church LGBT organisation. The text in the last paragraph reads, if you can't read it, LGBTQI is the umbrella term we use, I should say, to refer to people who describe themselves as lesbian, gay, transgender, queer or intersex. Who proofread that? They will not buy. Do you see where I'm heading?
Yes.
Yeah? Trying so hard to be inclusive, but failing so dismally. Okay. So, just going to show you some book covers now. These are some typical LGBT/queer theology books. Gay Theology Without Apology, admittedly quite old. Only reference to bisexuality is in the index, where it says bisexual, see lesbian, gay, bisexual. It's kind of circular because there's nothing about bisexual. So if you look at bisexual, it says see lesbian, gay, bisexual, but there's nothing about bisexual. Okay? Slightly excuse Gary David Comstock, whoever he is, because it was quite an old book. However, Keith Sharp, some people might know him. I have no personal issues with any of these people. I'm just trying to make a point, as people will diss my academic work. You know, it's just the way it goes. You put something out there, someone's going to read it and make comments. People do it about me, so I'm not being a cow, okay? It's just the way it is. Keith Sharp, 2012, I think this was, so not that long ago. The Gay Gospels, good news for lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgendered people. No index, bisexuality not mentioned in the context. Okay? No good news. I am not fit even to eat half a crumb from under the table. Queer and Christianity. Now these are some very, very significant LGBT academic writers. Patrick Cheng, massively up there as, you know, right on topical person to quote in academic work. Robert E. Shaw Goss, written loads of stuff. Okay? Queer and Christianity, finding a place at the table for LGBTQI Christians. No mention whatsoever of bisexuality in the index. If you know publishing, if it's in the index, it's in the book. Nothing. Okay? Ooh, nasty Christians, I hear you say. Bisexuality in Islam. I have a friend, one of my research colleagues, Maisha, is Muslim, and we were kind of chatting about this, so we started looking at books online. Homosexuality in Islam, critical reflections on gay, lesbian and transgender Muslims. Are there no bisexual Muslims? The making of a gay Muslim, religion, sexuality and identity in Malaysia and Britain. Fair enough, he hasn't really tried to say he's talking about anything else. But if you're going to put a rainbow flag up, I kind of think you need to cover a bit more. Living out Islam, voices of gay, lesbian and transgender Muslims. Now, it's possible they couldn't find a single bisexual Muslim who's brave enough to be interviewed. That is possible. However, do you see the point? So this is not restricted to Christianity. This is a kind of weird thing that seems to happen. It feels like a conspiracy. Now, going back to things like the gay Gospels or queering Christianity, what you find in these books, and I'm really pleased to see a leaflet about bisexuality at one of the desks outside, and I think Michelle's desk. Really, really pleased to see that. Because what happens is something called cultural appropriation. Do you know what that means? When you kind of take someone for your cause. And what happens is this curious thing with King David. Now, King David apparently is a gay icon. He is the David Beckham of the Bible, you know, good-looking man, women and men, sheep, goats, fall at his feet. Now, David, isn't called David Beckham. David in the Bible. Okay, what do we know of David? He's very good-looking. He starts off a bit weedy, then he becomes this, you know, strong, reddish-haired, buff man. He sees a naked woman on the roof. He thinks, "Cool, I'd like a bit of that." This is the message. Message translation. "Cool, I'd like a bit of that," said David. He has sex with her. He gets her pregnant. He arranges for her husband to fight in the equivalent of the Royal Marines or the guns or whatever, all the ones in the army that always snuff it when they're in the news. He, you know, arranges for him to get killed. And then he has this deep erotic, possibly erotic friendship with Jonathan. We don't quite know. I will agree it has overtones of being a bit too cuddly. But we don't know. We think it's probably sexual, but we don't know. But what do we know about David from the Bible? That he saw a woman, went for, had sex with her, got her pregnant. There's no doubt whatsoever about that. So, by my logic, he is either straight and capable of an intense friendship with a man, or he is bisexual. But what is he definitely not? A gay man. So why have we got all these books going on about David and Jonathan, David gay icon? It's not true. If you're going to approach the Bible like that, it's just not, it doesn't add up. And it culturally appropriates David for the gay cause. Now, it's no coincidence that a lot of these queer theologians are men. They are gay men, a lot of them. And they're stealing our bisexual people for their cause. And I want them back. You give them back. You don't, Nick David, because we don't have very many role models. And the ones we've got, we'd like to keep, thank you. Ruth as well. I've been to so many evangelical church services where they've talked about loyalty and the beautiful story of Ruth and Naomi's friendship. It was a bit weird, isn't it? Very strange friendship where you leave everyone else behind and shack up with your ex-mother-in-law and then have a child and bring it up together. I mean, but you get my point. People do what they want to do to benefit their cause. And it just isn't fair. So what is it about bisexuality that people either ignore it, which in sociology is known as bisexual erasure? I know, it sounds like a dodgy 80s group. Why do they ignore it? And what is it about bisexuality that is just generally omitted from discourse on human sexuality, particularly in the church? And that's why you will hear bisexual people talking about the need to raise bi visibility, if you're not ignoring them in the first place. So, bi visibility, no, I'm not going to tell you that, because if you come to the workshop, I'll give you an answer to the quiz question. I don't want you to know the answer. Okay, so I could talk all day about bisexual erasure, but I want to limit it in this bit to why it goes on in LGBT affirming church culture and organisations. Now, I want you to look at this. This does give you one of the answers to my quiz, so you get one right. Williams Institute, USA, large research body, published this research through GLAD, so glad.org. This is April 2015. LGBT community, we don't mix trans in when we're looking at sexual orientation, because that would be about gender, this is about sexual orientation. Of LGBT community, 52% identify as bisexual, over half. 52%. Okay, of which 33% bisexual women, 19% bisexual men. 52%. By far the largest sector. Now just keep that in your pending tray, in your head. Now I'm having an ongoing email exchange with one large affirming organisation which runs lots of workshops in the capital, and I keep asking them, why do you keep doing things on L and G and T and never B? And I have lots of friendly emails. I've offered my services, but they're not interested. Now I'm aware I'm probably not everyone's cup of tea, but I am by far the most experienced person that talks about this, and they never ever ask me. Now it's been suggested to me, perished thoughts, that male church leaders are not very keen on female academics. And I do get it. Clever, funny, hip, reasonably attractive. Yeah, quite threatening. Humble. But on a more serious note, I think the real issue is a complete misconception of what bisexuality is, and frankly, a total unwillingness to learn. I don't mince my words. So, bisexuality, quite simply, a romantic and/or sexual attraction to more than one gender. That is a definition used by the Bisexual Index. It's used by various bisexual academics and activists. So nothing particularly controversial there. So I think the ignorance in the church, particularly the Church of England, might have something to do with this booklet, which I'm guessing a lot of you are familiar with. Yes? Yeah? Okay. Issues in human sexuality. Okay? It was brought out in 1991. We did a little argument paper that didn't argue much in 2001. Basically, 43 pages long, so it's like a booklet. Mandatory reading if you're entering ordained ministry in the Church of England. You have to say that you will obey its contents. 43 pages. 17 of which are dedicated to the phenomenon of homosexual love. So you are phenomenal if you're into it. The Church of England says you are phenomenal. 43 pages, 17 pages on homosexuality, 1 paragraph on bisexuality, 119 words long. Paragraph 5.8, it rolls off my tongue, section 28. Paragraph 5.8, in which, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing at message level, so not wildly out, but just a bit plain. You should stick to your heterophile leanings and seek counselling for your potential personality disorder. Simple. Just stick to your straight side. Well, there's a spectrum, and it goes from 0 to 7, I think, yeah? And if you're exclusively straight, you're down here, and if you're exclusively gay, you're up here. Well, if you're with someone exclusively straight, and you are bisexual, but not quite fully homosexual, but you're like a 5 on the Kinsey scale, you're a very long way from exclusively straight. And that is not easy to have a relationship with someone. And that's what happened to me. I just could not make it work. I was too far up the spectrum, and I do believe in the spectrum, but I do also believe that some people are totally one way or totally the other as well. Meet my ex-husband, and you will meet someone who is so rampantly straight, there's just not a shred of homosexuality. So this statement, This is the one that spawned the title of my book, 119, because it is just ghastly to a whole 52% of the LGBT population, summing them up as personality, having a disordered personality, and people that are, it basically suggested you were adulterous if you were bisexual. It's in so many words says that. Now, I don't know about you, but I get up on a good day, 6 a.m. I drive a 60-mile round trip to work. I lecture all day, back-to-back lectures, to people that are often quite needy. They all come to me with all their problems at break time and lunchtime. I teach sociology, it's just what happens. Everyone thinks you want to hear about their sexuality and their depression when you teach sociology. And sometimes you don't mind, but other times, like, oh, can you just be happy for the day? And so I do that, and then I drive home in horrible rush hour. If you know the M3, M27, the whole bit between Winchester and Southampton is horrible. So it might take me an hour and a half to drive home. Some evenings I have the kids because they live with their dad. I have to do lesson prep. I'm absolutely knackered. You are very fortunate I'm here. And that sounded arrogant. You know what I mean? I'm so tired is what I'm trying to say. So this idea that I've got time to have multiple partners, it's like, how does that happen? And I don't have these issues about people who are in consensual polyamorous relationships. As someone once said to me, better honest polyamory than lying monogamy. But you know, I don't know about you, I would rather watch Midsummer Murders and eat Maltesers than have sex every evening. I don't want to do that every evening either, but you know what? Large hole dig, but you know what I'm saying. So, and I think, you know, one of the things I've also found is that there's a large amount of homophobia and biphobia among clergy. And from my research, which involved interviewing clergy, a lot of them knew of clergy who had had same-sex relationships as well as heterosexual relationships, but chose not to talk about it for fear for their job. Now, I do understand that. I totally get that. What I don't like is people that have done that, but then hide it by speaking out against LGBT people. For me, that is disingenuous, damaging, hypocritical, and it makes my blood boil. I went to a storming talk by Jeffrey John at Salisbury a few months ago. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was talking about that. He got really, really ragey about it. So it's this kind of idea that, you know, to bring my Bible bits in, where does it say in the Bible, the Lord looks at the outward manifestation of your relationship and says, that's okay. He, she, they, however you want to define God. I don't personally have a pronoun thing going on, but I understand it upsets some people. It's so clear from the Bible that God knows what's going on underneath the outside appearances. So why do people even... What bit of you thinks it's okay to bring down other people that are LGBT when you know full well that there's some of that in you? Yeah. And these verses to me are key. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Now, I grew up in South Wales, where tidy is a common adjective for anything that's good, not just neat. So a tidy house, but also a tidy cake, a tidy buffet, a tidy bargain at the shops, a tidy bit of Welsh lamb, a tidy business proposal. I've even seen a tidy arrest in the newspaper. It was a tidy arrest, said Tom Jones of South Wales CID. Tidy. Now, I make no apologies whatsoever to refuse to be tidy in my sexuality. I am driven by truth. I really hate lies, and I can't stand mental laziness. It's like, let's ignore the complexity and messy realities of people's lives, people's loves, people's sexualities, so that we can preserve positions of dominance and avoid awkward questions. Let's avoid anything that makes us think too much. Much easier to have closure. Populism exists in LGBT faith circles as well. This isn't just a preserve of Nigel Farage. We have populism in church as well. It's just easier if people are definitively male or female, lesbians or gays, because then we all know where we are, don't we? Well, it's a bit like we're sorting pasta, isn't it? Got nice little jars that we've bought in the, we've gone to Matalan or Lakeland if you're posh, and you've got your pasta jars in your kitchen. You've got your fusilli, your rigatoni, your pen or your penne, your white pasta, your wholemeal pasta. But what if you're tricola farfalla? That's me. Some people are more than tricola. Don't know what the word for four is for that. Okay? And I think LGBT faith organisations are just as guilty. Think back to my leaflets. Proof is in the leaflets. If not more guilty of bi erasure than the secular world, because when we go to LGBT support organisations, we're expecting to feel supported. It's not the tennis club. And we don't feel supported if everyone pretends we don't exist. Most of us here I'm sure most of us hold intersectional identities. Luke touched on intersectionality this morning. Intersectionality, great big fat sociological buzzword. It basically means to hold more than one minority identity. So yeah, came about in 1990, an article by black feminist Kim Crenshaw. Intersectionality, or to have an intersectional identity, more than one minority identity. So, I am female, I am a Christian, I am bisexual. Sometimes I am not English, so I can feel that as well. I have an intersectional identity. Some of you have way more going on than that. I still have an element of privilege. I'm educated, I'm white, I'm able-bodied. And just like looking at the simple sexuality grid, so we've got from opposite sex attracted, OSA, to SSA, same sex attracted. We've got another axis going down the way, male to female. So a lot of people have these categories going on. You've got Boris Johnson as your white straight male. I know it's not pleasant looking at Boris. At the time, he wasn't quite as offensive as he when it registered. Graham Norton, most people's idea of a gay man. A bit camp, bit of a bitch, but I know you're not all like that. All right, I'm not very PC. I'm sorry. Meghan Markle, straight female. Ellen DeGeneres, lesbian female. Categories, easy, simple, yeah? For an intersection, you don't quite fit neatly in those categories. So perhaps a more simple intersectional drawing that's still quite simple. You've got male, female, but you might be gender fluid, in which case you might identify, or you might be intersex, so biologically you might be a combination. Opposite sex attracted, same sex attracted. You might be both and identify as bi, or pan, or other middle sexualities. This is an intersection, yeah? You see the intersection between categories. That's still quite simple. A lot of us will have these additional intersectional identities of race, disability, nationality. Your gender, you might be transgendered and your gender feels separate from your biological sex, different from your biological sex. So what Luke was saying this morning as well, it's not enough just to say, oh, we've got lesbian and gay equality. That's not touching all the other people that's lives are way more complicated than that. My life is quite complicated, but it's got nothing on some people's lives, I know. And this is reality. We can't, this is the reality of people's lives. And it's like we don't want to talk about reality. So, it feels to me that the church can just about get its head around same-sex relationships. Not all churches, obviously, but no, not even most. A lot of churches can get their heads around same-sex relationships in a kind of, it's a lesser variation of the straight one, but they can kind of get their heads around it. If you are a lesbian couple or a gay couple in church, they can just about get their head around it as long as you behave in a nice middle-class way. As long as you shop at Waitrose together, adopt a cat with an anxiety disorder, be thoroughly nice and middle-class and PC, that's fine. But if you're bi or trans or single, heaven help you, And we threaten their nice arguments, and that is the other issue. We don't fit neatly in a box. We don't fit their sexual politics based on binary systems. We disrupt the born gay argument. We might include the B nominally to be politically correct, but actually we don't want those bisexual people around. We don't want them giving us a bad name with their threesomes. Disrupting our neat and tidy Lady Gaga born this way argument. Some people are born bisexual, some people become bisexual over the lifespan. Some people, and this sounds dodgy, have bisexuality thrust upon them by circumstance. But on a more serious note, the reason I'm talking about this today is mental health, and that's probably the focus of my research. Bisexual people, along with trans people, have the worst mental health of all sexual orientations. There isn't data on being bisexual, Christian, and mental health other than my own research. But you can imagine it's probably worse with the religious intersection thrown in. Canadian Public Health Survey in 2010 showed that bisexual men and women are 6 times more likely to commit suicide than straight people, twice as likely as lesbian or gay. Yet, in 2015, YouGov survey showed that 49% of young people between 18 and 24 identified as not entirely straight. That's gone up to 57% by a Ditch the Label survey. So if over half of people do not identify as entirely straight, and they come to our churches and all there is a general leaflet about homosexuality, if that, then what are we doing to meet their needs? What is the worst thing you can do to trigger off bad mental health? Not talking about something so that people feel isolated and that they're a freak. And this is what goes on in our churches, and unfortunately it goes on in loads and loads of LGBT faith organisations. Which is why certain organisation in London, I never get asked to speak there. And possibly that's because they think I'll give the, it's about polyamory, it's about adultery, bisexuality, and that'll ruin our argument. Well, no, I'm not polyamorous. I'm not adulterous, but even if I was, is that what we do? Do we make assumptions about people, or do we love and are we inclusive? So, this is what I think goes on a lot of the time in the church. This is our intersection that I had between male, female, gay, straight. We seem to have Jesus, Lord of straight men and women. And then we have to have Jesus, Lord of lesbians and gays in the LGBT organisations. That's, to me, what it feels like goes on. But this is what it should be. Jesus, Lord of all, at the intersection of everyone's identities. This is what should be going on. So, that's really what I wanted to say today. Thank you.